Hey everyone, welcome to another responsive design video. In this video, I want to talk about creating responsive fluid text using something called Clamp in CSS. In this video, my HTML is very simple. I have in the body a class called grid container. I've got a header with an H1, a nav with the UL, a series of LIs with links, as always. That's the normal nav. I've got a div class main container, which has an article, an H2, and a series of paragraphs. You can put 3 to 5 paragraphs in there, it doesn't matter. And there's only one article in the main content. See? And then I've got a sidebar with an article and an H2 and a series of paragraphs. I think I've got 3 to 5 paragraphs in there. And only one article in the sidebar. And then I've got my footer, and then my grid container closes. So this is kind of just a standard boilerplate HTML that I've been using in several videos. I have a style sheet here, and I've got some things set up. Set my root elements HTML font size to 100%. That means it's going to use the browser default of 100%. Usually roughly works out to 16 pixels. I've got my header font size set to 32 pixels right now. I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to delete both of these because I'm going to do things a little differently. You may have seen me use these values here to demonstrate the difference between ems and rems. Well, I want to talk about something called Clamp today. What Clamp does is it is a function that generates a value, okay? And it generates it based on 3 input values, or 3 what we would call parameter arguments. Here's what Clamp looks like. It's got the name Clamp, and then it's got these parentheses. These parentheses in most programming languages are called a parameter. And the purpose of a parameter is to bring values into the function so they can make calculations. And it's bringing these 3 values into the function. The middle value is the one I want to focus on first. That's our preferred size. What's going to happen is the browser is going to look at that preferred size, and it's going to try to set it at that value. Right now, the width for my article is set to a preferred size of 85% of the view width. So if it can, it's going to set it to that. Now, I've got a maximum value and a minimum value. My minimum value is 45 characters. My maximum value is 75 characters. So what it's going to try and do is set it to 85% of the view width, unless it exceeds this or it's lower than this. If it's lower than 45, it's going to go at 45. If it's higher than 75, it's going to go to 75. Otherwise, it'll fluidly set the width of that container to 85% of the view width. And that may be anywhere in between 45 and 75 characters. It'll scale that box up and down until it hits a maximum size and a minimum size. That's what the clamp does. It makes for fluid growth given a preferred value. Now, in something like widths like this, it doesn't hurt to use the view width as your preferred size. Remember, view width is going to be the width of the viewport. So whatever you're viewing it on. If you're viewing it on a desktop, that viewport might be set to 1024 pixels wide. Okay, so at 100 VW, that value would be 1024. All right, and then if that value exceeds the 75 characters, it would clamp it to 75. If that value gets lower than 45 characters, it would clamp it to 45. Pretty cool. So you could do that with any of these values. You could do it with widths, you could do it with paddings, you could do it with margins, you could do it with anything. We're going to take a look at how it's used with fonts today. So we want our fonts to respond fluidly to the viewport, to the size of the viewport, all right? And I've set up 3 different style rules here, one for paragraph, one for H1, and one for H2. If you were designing for a full page, you might do it for all types of things, H1 through H6, block quote, Any of those types of things that would have their own standard font size. So what I've got here for my paragraph is I've got a minimum value of 1 rem, so 1 rem. I've got the preferred value of 1 rem plus 0.25. Okay, so it's a 0.25% of the view width over 1 rem. And then I've got a maximum value of 1.5, rem, not m. Thank you very much. So it's going to get no larger than 1.5 rem. My H1, the preferred size, is 2 rem plus 1% of the viewport's width, or 1 VW. Its minimum size is going to be 2 rem. Its maximum size is going to be 4 rem. So it's always going to be a little bit larger than the 2 rem, but we're never going to get below 2 rem. And my H2 is set to 1.5 rem plus 0.75 VW. And the maximum size is going to be 3 rem. And the minimum size is going to be 1.5 rem. All right, let's see how this looks in the browser. Go over here, I'm going to load it. All right, so you can see that I set the width of my articles to a maximum of 75 characters and a minimum of 45 characters. I'm going to go into debug mode, so I'll inspect. And that allows me to make things wider and narrower. So let's take a look at some of the values here. We're going to look at, start off with the H1. So I'm going to expand the H1 in the HTML here in the elements. Click on it, and that means it's going to highlight it. So you can see the font size is clamped 2 rem plus 1 VW, 4 rem for max, right? Now we have the ability to look at the computed styles. Computed styles are going to show us what the actual values in the browser are going to be. So I've got my font size right here, okay? You can see how it's generated. You can see the actual pixel size here, okay? Now watch this as the viewport width grows and shrinks. You'll see that the font size is getting higher. It started at about 40, now it's up to 41.52. And you can see it visually getting bigger as I expand. It's growing at a pretty slow rate, okay? And as I get smaller, you can see the font size is going to get smaller, and it's going to get smaller until it hits our min value. And we don't really ever hit the min value. Oh, there we go, 32 point, it's about 32 and a half is the min value. Okay, 32 and a half pixels. So you can see that growing and shrinking. Let's take a look at the H2. So I'm going to click on my H2 and we'll see the computed sizes. It starts right here at 30.93 pixels, and we don't quite ever hit our maximum. And as I shrink it, we don't ever really hit our minimum either, okay? So we never get down to that minimum value. Let's look at our paragraph. We're getting up to about 19 and a half, a little more than 19 and a half, 19 2/3. And you're going to see where it hits the minimum here in a second. Well, it actually never hits the minimum. It never quite gets down to that size. Never gets down to the 16 pixel or 1 rem value. Okay? So what this is doing is it's setting a fluid type size where the type is going to grow and shrink based on the needs of the viewport. Let's take a look at it in different devices here. Now, this list of devices is not great. I mean, it's iPhone 12 Pro. It's not terribly new, but it's still out there. Samsung S20 Ultra, Nest Hub, and now you'll see on the Nest Hub, it's going to get quite a bit bigger. Like our font sizes get quite a bit bigger. So we're at 18.56 font size for that. The max You can see that we've hit 19.2 pixels. iPad Air, 18.5 pixels. So this is fluid text using the clamp. Now, some people like using this, some people don't like using it, but it's just a newer technology that you can use if you want to, right? So let's review really quickly. What the clamp does is it allows you to have a preferred size for some element and then set a maximum value and a minimum value on it. This function will return a value. So I'm setting my preferred size, setting a maximum, and setting a minimum. All right, you can use this in your designs, and we'll take a look at some other strategies for handling type in another video. Thanks for watching.